ready for a deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic that's reshaping one of the world's biggest religions, Christianity. We're jumping into Lamin Sanneh's, whose religion is Christianity. And let me tell you, this one is full of surprises.
What really struck me about Sanneh's work is how he flips the script. We hear so much about Christianity's decline, especially in the West. But while that's happening, there's this other story unfolding. It's like an explosion of growth, a surge in Christianity happening in Africa, Asia, places we don't usually associate with it.
Yeah, it's like this huge shift is happening right under our noses, and most of us are totally clueless. But the numbers are startling. I mean, Sanneh points out that at the beginning of the 20th century, only about 9% of Africa was Christian. But by the end of that same century, some estimates put that number closer to 50%. That's a massive change in just 100 years.
It really makes you stop and think. We can't talk about Christianity as just a Western religion anymore. It's becoming something different, something more, and it's happening independently of anything going on in Europe or North America.
It's like we're seeing Christianity take root in new soil, growing in ways we never expected. It makes you wonder, is this the future of faith? Is this what a more diverse, dynamic Christianity looks like?
You know, it actually reminds me of the early church. They weren't operating in a Western world either. The way Christianity is adapting and thriving in these different cultures today shows just how adaptable it can be, how it can speak to people across time and place.
Okay, so we've got this incredible growth happening, but hold on, because Sanneh doesn't stop there. He introduces this whole other layer, this idea of an indigenous theological advantage, and this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, that indigenous theological advantage, that's what really grabbed my attention. It's at the heart of what makes this global Christianity so different, so dynamic.
It's a powerful phrase, right? It really makes you think about how Christianity is being understood and experienced in these cultures. So for our listeners, imagine this. What if, instead of replacing your existing beliefs, Christianity actually connected with them, built on them?
Exactly. It's not about imposing some foreign god. It's about recognizing that these cultures already have a deep understanding of faith, of the divine. It's about finding those connections, those echoes of the Christian message within existing traditions, like take the Yoruba people of Nigeria.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
Well, they have this traditional savior figure, Olubala, and through their encounter with Christianity, they've come to see Olubala reflected in Jesus.
It's not about erasing their beliefs,
Right.
but adding a new layer, finding those points of overlap. I love that.
And it's not just a one-off thing. Think about the Maasai people of East Africa. They have their own African creed, which is totally unique, totally rooted in their experience.
So different from any Western creed I've ever encountered. What's their focus?
For them, God is the creator who walks with them on safari, who understands their struggles. It's a very intimate, experiential faith.
It really highlights how the Christian story can be told and understood in such diverse ways. It's not this rigid, monolithic thing. It's adaptable, fluid almost.
Right. And that's the beauty of this indigenous theological advantage. It challenges this whole idea that to become Christian, you have to erase your own culture. It's just not true.
Which naturally makes me think about Bible translation. It's a huge topic, and Sanneh doesn't shy away from the concerns people have about it. The worry that it's a form of cultural imposition, or even worse, a tool to erase those local traditions we were just talking about. So how do we reconcile those two things? It's a valid concern, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole history of translation being used for, let's say, less than noble purposes.
Definitely. We can't just gloss over that. But Sanneh's take on it is really interesting. He actually argues that Christianity itself, from its very beginnings, has always been a translated religion.
I never thought of it quite like that before.
But think about it. Jesus' words, they weren't originally in English or Latin. They were in Aramaic, then translated into Greek to reach a wider audience. So translation was there from the start, essential for spreading the message. And throughout history, having the Bible in everyday languages, it's been a way for ordinary people to access the text directly.
It's about giving people ownership of their faith, not keeping it locked away in some language they don't understand.
Exactly. And it wasn't always easy. Even the King James Bible, which we consider a classic now, it faced pushback when it first came out.
Really? Why is that? I always thought people would be thrilled to have it in English.
Some worried that putting it in English would make it less sacred, too open to interpretation.
Oh, wow. It's fascinating how these debates keep coming up in different forms throughout history. But Sanneh goes even further, doesn't he? He argues that instead of being this threat to cultures, Bible translation can actually be a way to preserve them. How does that work?
Well, when you translate the Bible into a language, you're saying that language is important, it has value, especially in a world where globalization can sometimes feel like it's homogenizing everything. It's a way of saying your language, your culture, your way of understanding God, it matters. It has a place within Christianity.
It's like you're giving that culture a voice, a way to participate in this global conversation about faith. It's a really powerful idea. And, it makes me think about something else. We've been talking about how Christianity is booming outside the West, how it's changing and adapting. But then there's the secular West, which seems to be moving in a totally different direction. Can these two worlds, which seem so different, can they learn from each other? Can there be a real dialogue?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Can a secular society really understand, truly appreciate what's happening in these other parts of the world, these different expressions of Christianity? I think there's potential for a real meeting of minds here. And I'm not talking about conversion, but about genuine exchange, a willingness to learn from each other.
What would that even look like? How do we even begin to bridge that gap?
I think it starts with curiosity. What if, instead of viewing this global Christianity with suspicion, the West approached it with a sense of wonder? What if, by engaging with these different ways of being Christian, the West could rediscover something about the core of the faith itself?
It's like seeing the familiar with fresh eyes.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's not just a one-way street. This encounter, it could give a platform to the voices of global Christianity, allow them to challenge Western assumptions, share their unique perspectives. It's a chance for them to say, hey, we have something valuable to offer, a way of understanding faith and culture that might speak to your own struggles.
Which brings us back to that core question of Sanneh's book. Whose religion is Christianity? It's a question that pushes us to broaden our understanding, to see beyond those narrow definitions of what it means to be Christian. And I love how he ends the book with this incredibly moving story of Bishop Ajayi Crowther. He was born in Nigeria, captured by slave traders as a child, eventually rescued by the British Navy, and went on to become the first African bishop in the Anglican Church. Talk about a life that defies categories.
Crowther's story is incredible. He embodied this idea of bridging cultures. He understood both the African and Western worlds and used that understanding to champion a Christianity that was both true to its roots and relevant to his own context. He was a pioneer in Bible translation and education and building bridges between faiths. Just an extraordinary figure.
It's the story that really makes you think. If someone who endured slavery, who navigated between those seemingly opposing worlds, if you could find a way to build those bridges through faith, what does that say about what's possible for us today? What does it say about the power of dialogue, of empathy, of seeking common ground, even amidst all the complexity of our world? And for me, that's what makes this deep dive so powerful. It's not just about understanding a global shift in Christianity. It's about recognizing the potential for connection, for mutual understanding that exists even in the face of difference. It's a reminder that faith, instead of dividing us, can be a force for something truly transformative. So until next time, keep those questions coming. Keep exploring those different perspectives, and who knows what incredible insights you might have.